And if you look at the total work output from a planetary perspective, and you say, okay, now if this was an office and you knew that you had certain individuals in certain places in the office, that if you put them together, they are statistically the best people to work on this problem, why would you not pair them together, right? And any company that says, I don't want to go remote or we will never do remote is putting themselves at a statistical disadvantage because now they are not able to put the right butt in the right seat. So you're kind of shoehorning people into these positions that they're not the best in the world to be at.
What's up, everybody? This is Mike from Polyform Studio, and this is Product Lab, the show that explores product strategies of startups through interviews, experiences, and stories with the founders. Today, we're joined by Cory Hamel, VP of Product and Research at Gigster, a company democratizing access to great software development. With over 800 engineers, Gigster helps startups to Fortune 500 companies unleash human cloud-driven innovation at a global scale. We've got a killer episode for you today, uncovering everything from Web3 to AI, decentralized work.
Let's go.
Let's go. All right, Cory, for everybody here who might be a little bit unfamiliar, what's like the elevator pitch of Gigster? Like, what's Gigster all about?
So we've been around for about 10 years now. Wow. Our founders had this crystal ball vision that the future was going to be distributed and that it was going to be remote, and that in order to really harness that, they looked at it, interestingly enough, from like a data problem. And they said, okay, so if we know the future is going to be distributed, it's going to be remote, how do we invest in tooling and research to make distributed teams successful? And how do we build technology that puts people in places to be successful? And that was the kind of founding vision. And that's what we at Gigster kind of proper do. So I tell a lot of people that we're a data company, or a data company on people. We want to understand how interactions happen in a remote world, and how do we make people, our teams, successful when executing against projects. And we happen to apply our technology to custom software development. But our kind of dream is that a lot of these tools could get used for any type of role in any type of industry. So that's the long-term one, but near-term, it's really working on some of like the most innovative tech that's out there, and then putting this layer of, AI and ML and processes that makes it possible for teams to be successful in the space.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. And we go way back. I follow everything you're up to over there at Gigster, always on top of emerging tech. You were the blockchain guy for a while. Now you're the VP of product. Congrats on the new gig, by the way.
Yeah.
As the VP of product, at a company like this where you're focused on helping people build emerging tech with all of your great ML and AI insights, how do you stay on top of it? It's so hard right now.
And there's so much as well, right?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. It's like there's this weird like a bit of imposter syndrome that I think that goes with it. Like I was moving into the role now. It was basically, before I was director of blockchain, it was like, okay, Cory, you need to know everything about blockchain. I was like, all right, cool. Definitely, I love it, first of all, so that makes it easy. But now it is, we need to understand all the product areas that we can be in. And obviously emerging tech's a big one. We fold into beyond AI and ML into like IoT and like all that kind of stuff. And it is like a water hose. Staying on top of it is extremely difficult. But I think as soon as you, or at least for me, as soon as I let go of that, I don't have to be the expert in all of these. I'd kind of just really have to like conceptually understand from a business impact standpoint what they mean.
Right.
And once you kind of get that, then you have enough to, I don't want to say steer a ship, but enough to work to predict on where it's going. Now I'm definitely not always right. But when I look at a lot of the AI ML space, we're really lucky in that we've got a lot of great engineers that work for us that have super tight pulses on the space, right? So I'm constantly messaging and asking like, hey, what's new here? Like, what does this mean? Like when the chat GPT came out, it was like, give me the rundown. Like, what does this mean for a business? What's the bigger picture? And if I would say to anyone out there trying to keep a pulse on it, like you can't read enough to stay up to date, but you can talk to people and they will synthesize down for you a lot of stuff. So I find my way of staying on top of it is talking to folks, and they will kind of take all. I look at like every single person as like they've read 1,000 articles and they'll condense those down into like a 30-minute talk session with me, and now I've kind of scaled up quickly. So I try to like scale knowledge into these places through that.
That's awesome advice. That's so good, because I know like right now, even for us, we're product guys. We're trying to build for our clients and stuff, and every niche feels like it's just blowing up right now. Of course, the AI is so hot, but we're also pretty deep into the AR world and mixed reality and metaverses and stuff like this. So every one of them is going through a crazy cycle right now, which is exciting, but yeah, trying to keep on top of it all, impossible. Keeping the big brains around, good advice.
Yeah, no, that's definitely there. And I think that the hardest part, which I don't know if there's like an answer to, and maybe this is again one of those things you just have to be comfortable in being uncomfortable, is that a lot of times when you're in an emerging tech space, a lot of people expect to have like answers for a lot of things, and it's like you don't, because nobody does. I think that as you guys saw, as in a lot of the Web3 and blockchain space, when it was early on, people are trying to say, what do I need to do? How do I be successful in this place? It's like, this is, we're in uncharted waters,
That's right. Yeah.
Here be dragons, or so they say.
Yeah.
There's no rule book. Yeah.
Yeah. I say to a lot of people, it's like driving at night, you know where you're trying to go, but you can only see like 20 feet in front of you, and you just keep driving and, make turns when you need to, and eventually you get there. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great analogy, and like to some people, right, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
But I think to certain groups of people, that's extremely exciting, and extremely interesting position to be in. Just to kind of white knuckles on it,
Let's go.
Constantly
figuring out where you're at, and I think that's that's why I like working with you guys.
Yeah. It's exciting stuff for us, and we've been at it long enough that I think we're pretty comfortable driving in the dark. I don't think we do much driving in the day, to be honest.
That's true.
But you guys work with a ton of big enterprises, a ton of new companies too. You're talking about building all types of emerging tech. For people who are like looking, maybe they're like looking to start a startup, and they're looking at all this emerging tech, or if you were going to start a startup and looking at all this emerging tech, what would you keep in mind? What would be like a piece of advice for somebody trying to build a new company in one of these new spaces?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was listening to a podcast the other day, again, trying to scale through the voice of others, and they and I can't remember the name of it, and I feel really bad now because I should give them a shout out because I'm about to quote them. But they gave a really good analogy around, in the AI space right now, specifically like generative AI. It is a gold rush. Like there's, I saw a stat the other day. There's like, there's been over 500 new companies pop up, that are in generative AI, and there's probably 2 or 3x more than that, either in stealth or just getting started. And he akined it to, if you're looking to start a business in a gold rush, you have to understand, and if you look back at history, that there was a number of companies that were successful that weren't after gold. In the gold rush of the 1800s or whenever. I should know this.
Selling the pickaxes.
Selling the pickaxes. Sell shovels, sell pickaxes. Like Levi Strauss made a ton of cash during the gold rush, right? Like selling these type of work clothes to people going to work. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So when you're looking at this gold rush of generative AI, it's like what will be the Levi Strauss of generative AI?
Interesting.
And it's a good point of view to have, because it's One can be, you can easily put yourself in a blue ocean that's next to a red ocean, which is great because the red ocean is validated that there's a problem set there and people willing to adopt. And you can be complementary to it. So I think when I look at startups, and Gigster itself is owned by a PE firm, so I kind of help them to look at things that are in the market. That the ones that I find super interesting is like, who are the pickaxes and shovels and the Levi's of the California gold rush, but for AI.
Yeah.
I feel like that's such good advice. And we work with a ton of startups, dozens of startups a year. And we talk to a lot of people about how like solving unsexy problems are always like there's a lot more fertile ground there than the sexy problems, right? And pickaxes and shovels aren't very sexy, but compared to gold, but everybody is going to need them, right? And, there'll be still a need for shovels or jeans once the gold rush is over.
So years ago, I used to, and this is a funny story I always tell. So the previous company that I worked at, we were like a physical product development company. So we did like physical products and all kinds of stuff from like medical device stuff to IoT, like product things. So if like you wanted to build a lamp, like a smart lamp, like we would prototype your lamp and all of these things. And one of like the biggest licensing deals I think that we maybe ever did was a guy had come into us, and his wife had been having a problem that the garbage bags always like falling down into their trash can. So he took out a pocket knife and cut a little star hole into the side of the plastic trash can, and then pulled the bag around and stuck it through this little hole to keep the bag around. And he's like, I think this is a good idea, and came to us, and we were like, sure, we'll build a prototype, and ended up, I think we licensed it to Rubbermaid, and now it's on like every single Rubbermaid trash can that's out there. And the guy was very, very lucrative. So again, a very unsexy thing of holding trash bags up in trash cans, but a very real world problem that did really well. And that's, again, when I look at startups, it's chasing the sexy thing, but you're trying to build something that doesn't have a problem. Is something, a big mistake I see a lot of people make, because they want to be in the sexy place, but there's no problems there yet. So like, take the step back.
Very much an uphill battle, right? Something like that. Now, what about like, you guys have clients coming to Gigster. They probably see all of this new sexy AI tech out there, and they're trying to wrangle it together in some way. Are you guys, what's the kind of stance? Is it like, listen, let's wait for this technology to kind of find itself a little bit more before we start mixing it together with some of the products that we're doing? Or are you guys all in? You're like, absolutely, let's build something leveraging Chat GPT. Or
from as my VP of sales would probably say, we are all in.
We're all in.
So let's 100%. We would love to do that.
Love it.
Yeah, no, I think that one of the most dangerous statements that I hear come in is either, someone comes to us and says, hey, my CEO says we need to be doing something with AI. It's like, okay, well, like,
what does that even mean?
What does that even mean? Like, do you know about it? Like, what are you trying to solve? Do you have a problem you're solving? Or is it just they saw it in TechCrunch and now we need to do it? Or, a similar one even now, I saw that Starbucks sold out of their NFT loyalty stuff and made $2 million or something in like 15 minutes. So phones ringing, hey, we need to do an NFT. I'm like, do you understand what that means? No, but we know we need to do one. And that is probably by far the most dangerous thing that I hear people come in and say for a couple of different reasons. And this is where I think that we've had projects fail in the past, and it's kind of viewed as this was Gigster's fault. And probably it was to a degree, in that, to answer your question, we should have been a little more cautious moving in. So in those projects, a lot of times, and I'll speak specifically in this case to AI, is that there's a time frame and there's a money frame for realized value out of a system. And a lot of companies think that they'll be able to just, push the button for AI and now their problems are solved. but they don't understand that there is there's a lot of work that goes into it, and understanding the true problem that you're trying to solve, and how much can you solve it. It is not a fix all. So there's a lot of times when we're dealing with these conversations, it's managing expectations of what can it do, versus what they see in the news. And then two, the monetary investment that goes in to make it successful. The AI projects that we've had fail, and this is where we should have done a better job of saying on the sales side, no, like we don't want to start, we should talk more, is that they go in and, after 3 months, there's no realized value yet. And therefore they cut the funding and cut the project and write it off as a loss.
Yeah.
When in reality that was a year or 2 year endeavor before that true value hit. And a lot of people fail to realize that when they look at like Chat GPT and they're like, oh my God, these guys just, I don't know, they just made this thing and it's great. We didn't hear anything about it.
Nowhere.
They came out of nowhere. They must have done it really fast. And it's like they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars and years tagging data to train this thing. And I think that is a bit of a more like pervasive problem in today's society with the connectivity and social media and just general sheer amount of real-time content that's out there in the news of that makes it seem easy. And that's something as a company you've got to help customers mitigate against. Maybe
it's not always easy.
I hope my head of sales isn't listening. He's gonna be like,
no,
Cory.
We get that one in AR all the time. It's like,
sure.
we got to do something in AR.
Right.
We need to, any conference or any festival or something, they all need something in AR, and they don't really know what it is, but they need it.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Well, I mean, so for in the AR for you guys, like when someone comes to you with it, is it that they saw they had an experience? And I've actually always been really curious about this, of when do people turn on for AR and VR? Is it that they had a firsthand experience with it and thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing? Or was it that they saw it in the news and said, we should do something similar?
I think it's a lot of the latter.
I agree. Yeah.
I think it's a lot of people saw something, and I mean, AR, it's still so early. There's really only a couple different types of implementations that make sense. Most of them are marketing related. So a lot of times it's like, we want to add something crazy to something we're already doing, and we think that AR would be cheaper than a bunch of like crazy LED panels or like projection mapping or something. Somebody wants to extend some experience in some branded way, and they think AR would be appropriate. Or we got a lot of, with COVID shaking up the whole conference and convention space, there's a lot of people who are like, we've got this big machine that we usually show at conferences, and due to COVID, we haven't been doing the conferences. We've been showing things digitally. Can we create like a digital twin and show that in AR instead of lugging this thing around?
Right.
People trying to like optimize with AR or extend some type of marketing campaign with AR are usually the big ones.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
or when people are selling things.
Yeah. You hear it in the news too, like the Starbucks example, right? Like, we heard that this company leveraged AR for their e-com and now they sold out. So we want the same thing. Or like
virtual try-on.
Yeah, virtual try-on.
Stuff
That
like
Shopify report from like a few years ago. It was like,
yeah.
you could get 70x percentage on sales if you have an AR version of your product. I'm like, oh shit, we got to do that. we need that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
right.
all right, cool.
Everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
I know the number of virtual try-on pitches or inbound requests that I've had are just
it's insane, man.
Insane.
So, let's take things back to Gigster for a second here. Gigster, built on the idea of distributed teams, right? It's a huge thing, especially post-COVID era, right? I feel like, especially in the industry that we work in, you're bound to interact with or be a part of some sort of distributed team, right? I noticed, or we found out, that you're doing a ton of research with Stanford, with Berkeley right now around, I believe, the benefits of it. What's some of the craziest things that you've learned diving through that research, talking to these people, understanding these teams a little bit better?
Some key takeaways.
Right.
First off, shout out to them, to all my research fellows over at Stanford. Thank you for all, and Penn. for all the work that you guys do. Yeah, I mean, there's always fascinating things that come out of it, right? Like, so for instance, one of the things that we're looking into right now, and like one of the areas uh, that's been really interesting to me is how do communities work within distributed teams and networks. So one of the things that we're looking to right now is how does algorithmic ranking opacity affect a network? Basically, how does having a score or some level of rank in a virtual community affect community engagement? Is it negative? Is it positive? Do you incentivize people to come back? If so, yes or no? Now, there's a lot of case studies out there that would say yes. For instance, like Stack Overflow or message boards where you have a post count and you have a badge that you unlock after so many things that would lean into saying yes. But does that actually transfer into a network that is there to work for monetary compensation, right? So they're not just participating out of free will because they're interested in whatever topic this might be.
Yeah.
So that area is super interesting, and that study's still going on. But what we found that is really I thought super fascinating is that there's a big issue with being remote and understanding cognitively where you fit into the social fabric. So when you think about it, so if you walk into an office, right, you might see the CEO sits over there, right, and there's a VP next to him. So you can kind of like visually map this chain of command. That there's some people like always at their desk before 9, like they're a hard worker or this or that. And then based on your perceived performance, you may place yourself at some level within this social fabric that is a workplace environment. And that is super human. That is completely normal. Everyone does that in every situation, and not even at work. You walk into a room, you'll immediately try to place yourself. Where do I fit within this social ranking or hierarchy? And that's just the lizard brain
Exactly. Yeah.
thing that happens. But when you go completely remote, you lose that, and it can have very devastating effects on building culture, on incentivizing participation, on understanding like where do you fit in this puzzle, or do you fit, or are you just this kind of island that's out there? And that's something that we never really expected to be a thing, but it really is. And so we've been doing a lot of kind of like research into how do you solve that? Like how do you fix this notion of social context or social fabric placement and distributed and global teams? Because when you go global, it then now becomes culturally, how do people place themselves differently, right? So if you're anyone that's worked with people around the world, there's obviously different cultures, there's different, obviously accents, but like mannerisms, but there's also these way different ways that they understand social context than you might. And how does that, once you start to blend all that together without any form of outside externalities flavoring into those, it becomes really a really fascinating like problem to try to solve.
Totally.
So that's another area.
This is actually something we dove pretty deep into, kind of like maybe a year into the pandemic. We started working with this startup. They're called Nooks. Yeah, shout out to the Nooks team. Super cool guys from Stanford, a bunch of young guns from there, doing really interesting work in this way. And their original hypothesis was if we set up a virtual office environment where everybody so there's like an overview of the whole office. Everybody has their own desk / kind of, you could imagine it like a child page of that office. Everybody has their own desk. You can see when people are at their desk. Everybody has their camera on kind of most of the time. If two people are like huddled together talking and it's set to public, you could move your little bubble close and like overhear conversations, the whole water cooler thing, right? And it was super interesting to see how startups would operate when that is their home base instead of just Slack channels or something. And actually, recently they pivoted into serving sales teams.
That's right.
because sales guys love to they love to listen to other people on sales calls and learn about how they pitch services or the product or whatever. So that kind of idea of, and they love to ring the bell and hear when somebody's made a sale and stuff. So that kind of sense of like being together, even though you're apart, for certain types of teams, especially like these sales guys, is so important and such a hard thing to tackle with distributed and remote teams. Glad to see people doing research into it and trying to find some solutions there.
Well, yeah, certainly. I also like the distributed teams, I think, is just not going away, right? It's like a symptom of like the pandemic that I think is here to stay. But there's still a lot of like naysayers out there for the whole like remote work, the whole distribution of skills and individuals across continents. And I feel like the biggest one that always comes back is like, it's time theft. I don't know if so-and-so is working. I can't like look over their shoulder, like that. It's like super antiquated, but it's still the thing you see over and over. Like, how do you go about combating that? Or like, what's like the take that you guys have?
No, I mean, so it's definitely there. And like, obviously everyone saw it with, like Elon Musk and Twitter requiring everyone to come back to the office. I've seen articles I saw one the other day. It's like in-person, this company said, I forget who it was, that in-person engineers, 3x outperform, remote engineers, which it's like, once you read into the article, it's just very hyper specific. But, I firmly believe, and we firmly believe that the future is remote but as we continue to globalize as a planet, right? The way that we look at it is, what is the total like work output that the planet itself can have? And if you look at the total work output from a planetary perspective, and you say, okay, now if this was an office, and you knew that you had certain individuals in certain places in the office, that if you put them together, like they are statistically the best people to work on this problem, why would you not pair them together, right? Why would you not move their desk and say, all right, you guys are working together now?
That's right.
And any company that says, I don't want to go remote, or we will never do remote, is putting themselves at a statistical disadvantage, because now they are not able to put the right, there's a book, I think it's called Traction or something. It's like, put the right butt in the right seat. So you're kind of shoehorning people into these positions that they're not the best in the world to be at. And so you immediately take a step down from that aspect, which for us, we think that that's like a terrible thing to do. Probably when we talk about distributed teams, like the number one thing that I get asked a lot, like, how do you guys manage culture? And back to what we were talking about before, it's that it's really hard to do if you don't provide any level of a social fabric. Then to connect on. So you're building on sand, and it's not going to work. So there's a lot of tools, a lot of stuff coming down the road, right? That's going to make this continuously easier and more effective. And that's kind of how I hope to see the future. We'll see.
We're with you, man. I mean, we're big
100%,
remote / distributed guys. I mean, Mike and I were working remote / digital nomad style for years before the pandemic, and Polyform was founded remote first, distributed first, right off the bat. Something that was always a big motivator for us to do that is global talent pool, like you were just describing. It's like we're very specific in what kind of designers we're looking for, and limiting ourselves to whoever lives in the local area and is also looking for a job at the exact moment we need to hire somebody is just shooting ourselves in the foot, right? And that's, for us, has always been one of the best part of it, for sure. What do you think, all these things, if you were a startup, if you were starting a startup and you were, wanting to go distributed, of course, but also knew about that social fabric / culture problem, what would you keep top of mind when you're building that team, making the first hires, setting those cultural foundations?
I would say, first of all, you're in a great spot. It's way easier to start remote than it is to be in person and then move remote. So you got that going for you. So point one. The second one too is that I think that you have to define differently what company culture is in remote, and what your expectations of culture are in remote, right? Do you expect everyone to, to go on a Zoom happy hour after work together and like drink beers like you might do in person? Like, or are you looking to just say, I want people that are engaged and about the mission? So understanding what culture means to you in the context of distributed is very, very, very important. Again, we see people trying to like copy that in-person culture into remote and saying, well, it just doesn't feel the same. It's like, well, obviously you're not in person. Like, so you've got to kind of rewire on your expectation and understanding what it means. The second part is, I think that's really, really important, is that it's so important to have like a clear mission and dream, something for people that can one, that can easily understand, but two, easily like rally behind and feel like they're part of something bigger, and that can, it helps establish uh, that social fabric at the beginning, right? So knowing that it is this, not the cliche, but like one team, one dream type of mentality.
Yeah.
But being able to constantly reinforce the core values that you were founded on, of what the mission is something that can be hard to do. And I see a lot of people don't do it. Like, we don't even do it well. I remember back when we had our office, and a lot of them, it's like, core values are stapled across the wall and everyone's constantly, looking at them and things. And then, you know, I don't have our core values stapled on the wall, or any of that. So just making sure that you build that cohesive vision is super important day one.
Yeah, I feel like that's extra hard for companies like Gigster or Polyform, where we're spending a lot of our time and brain energy building things for other people, and that mission isn't as it's not everybody always working towards that one mission, or it can feel like it's not that, because I'm working on this mission for this other guy, and we're working on this other mission for this other company at times.
Yeah.
But we try and keep really true to our mission of helping great ideas become great startups, helping great startups change
the world, baby. That's it.
So it's trying to contribute to net positive impact of startups and the whole
Across
startup
the board.
ecosystem in general.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what are some things that you guys do to keep
Culture
yeah,
wise. Oh man, Thursday afternoons, right after this, we got Thursday Dungeons
We play
and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got the squad. Yeah, I'm the DM.
Yeah.
We're taking them through the dungeons and
Yeah.
fighting all types of goblins and shit.
Yeah.
We do every 2 weeks. We got a town hall first
town
thing in the
halls,
day.
hear
We'll go over
updates.
cool projects happening. We'll talk about missions and visions for the quarter, emerging tech. Sometimes we'll do lunch and learn about some new things. I did one recently just teaching everybody about Midjourney and prompt craft and stuff like that.
Listen, I want to pivot the conversation a little bit here. We're going down a rabbit hole on AI stuff. I want to tap into old Cory, VP of blockchain, head in the Web3 space. How do you feel about what's going on now? Like with the whole state of like the metaverse, Meta is like shutting down all of the plans that they had. Yeah. We pulled the NFT functionality from Instagram and Facebook. It's crazy. So what's the future of Web3 for you guys? You've always been like a huge blockchain advocate. Like, what's it looking like?
Yes, and still am.
Still am, yeah.
Contrary to what my content that I put out now may say, I feel like it's so funny. Like when someone accused me the other day of bandwagoning new tech, which I didn't even like want to go into. Like, my job now as VP of product is to know what everything is going on and not just the Web3 stuff anymore, which was kind of funny. But no, so one's still super bullish on Web3 and metaverse stuff. I think that there is still some work to define exactly what we mean when we say metaverse. But the technology there is really solid. Meta pulling out of NFT support out of Facebook and Instagram, I think, is a great thing. A lot of that push, and as far as value drivers on it, was around it being collectibles and PFPs and all this kind of stuff, which, if you look at the target market, like Facebook and Instagram, was the wrong fucking place to try to push that message. There was no scenario within this universe that was going to be like often take off. Like new tech like that needs its own kind of world to grow up in, and trying to
Yeah.
plug it in there was going to fail day one. They also have like the massive cash investments that they're putting into their VR headsets, which I commend them for. Like,
Yeah.
thank you pre now. So when you come out with something that I'm sure is like, I have a friend that he's a ML engineer for computer vision at Meta, and he's like shown me some of the like off the record things, and it's insane. Like some of
No.
the stuff they have going on. So I think it's good. I push Mark to keep. I reference him like he's a friend, but I push Mark Zuckerberg to keep investing cash into that, because I really want that to happen.
Thank
So
you,
pulling out of
Mark.
that, thank you, Mark. Yeah, give us amazing glasses one day, please. I know you can do it. So no, I think that that's super fine. The crazy like reinforcing point that was the Starbucks stuff, as we said before.
Yeah. Yeah.
15 minutes sell out like that, I think was incredible to see. The other areas too that we're talking a lot with uh, is a lot of like enterprise use case stuff,
Hmm.
which is again is not the sexy space, but it is very utilitarian. And what we're seeing is,
Hmm.
and how we're, I don't want to say spinning it because that's not the right word, but how it's
Hmm.
being positioned more and more is this like infrastructure, like this infrastructure as a service
Yes.
almost. Um,
Yes.
and then the added benefits that you can build on top of it, and that's that from what we've seen from an enterprise perspective is landing really well, and there's a lot of interest and adoption moving into that space. So
Yeah.
as a whole, I think it's going to be massive and huge. As we all knew, it's not going to be, obviously it's not going to be bored apes and stuff like that, but it's going to turn into what um, how cloud computing went from like, oh my gosh, I can store something not locally, to now it's just the most expected thing to
Yeah.
ever be. Is how we see blockchain playing out over the next 5-10 years.
That's an analogy I give often, is that like blockchain, even this new generative AI stuff, this is infrastructure, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the cloud. This is like it's hot and interesting now, but it is tools that enable products to be built later. It is not the product itself,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the whole NFT PFP craze was often it was kind of the same as this like generative AI craze that's going on now. It's tech demos of
Yep.
amazing new stuff that's coming out that gets a lot of hype because it's fucking awesome, but
Mm-hmm.
it isn't like the ultimate use case, right? It was
Yep.
just like, look at what this can do, and now these kind of things are going to fade in the background, become infrastructure for the next whole generation of tools that are going to come out in the future. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's just going to be baseline expectation that things might be built on the blockchain the same way that things are built on AWS and the cloud and stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
I had an interesting question. It's not on our list. This is off the top of the head.
Oh my
But
gosh.
there's such an interesting Venn diagram of like Web3 in distributed teams that is like the DAO. What's your take on
Wow.
DAOs? Because like
Wow.
I've seen you
Yes.
mention DAOs a few times. I've been in a
Uh,
few DAOs myself. Usually they're a hot mess, but I feel
yeah.
like there's so much potential there. What's your
Uh,
hot take on the DAOs?
oh my God, I'm obsessed. I'm
Oh
fucking
no.
Love it.
obsessed. I can't
No.
even explain it. Like, it is in my brain all of the time. DAOs just are the most fascinating uh, random act of human organization that I've ever seen. And I think I mean, besides like, I don't know, tribes and civilizations, but like, I think it's incredible what they were able to do. And if I look at them and I look at seeing, okay, like my take on the future, and especially the future of work, is that it's going to be like extremely liquid and very, very fluid. That
Mm,
fractional work is going to be a very, very common thing in the future kind of global economy. A lot of that's already kind of prevalent with Uber and Lyft and DoorDash
of
and all of these
course.
like fractional
Sure.
works, Fiverr, Upwork, TopTal, Gigster, right?
Hey.
Yeah.
Being able to tap in when you want on either one, passion projects, or two, to give you some level of freedom in your life. Um, And so when I look at that and I say, all right, well, the future is going to be extremely liquid and very, very remote, typical companies are in no way set up to deal with fractional workers at scale.
Yes.
There's no way to deal with it. It's really hard to understand a contribution. It's really hard to understand like, and incentive drivers. It's hard to deal with this fluid rush of this new type of work. But DAOs do it. I don't want to say flawlessly because they are a hot mess, but they are way, way better at doing it than traditional orgs. So a huge area that I've been just obsessing over lately that I cannot get past. It's like, okay, there are these very, very cool mechanics that enable the future of work within DAOs. How do I take these out and like put them into a business? Or how do I
Yeah.
build these things into something that a company could use and be just
Yeah.
awesome?
I think that's the key thing, is building them into something else. And like, this is something we talk a lot about, is decentralization versus centralization. And there's like inherent optimization that comes with centralization.
Yeah.
How do you get that optimization buff from decentralized builds? And it's, they feel like opposing forces at times, but I know that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, and that's like, the centralization thing is something that's super super interesting as well. Like I saw that and I think this, to bring come back in, Mark. We're going to talk about you some more. In their like year of efficiency and their like flattening of the org that they're doing at Facebook and cutting out like all of these middle management jobs, which anytime you go centralized, you build this pyramid, right, of all this ineffectiveness. Sorry to every middle manager out there, but all this ineffective in the middle versus boots on the ground and then leadership. And so it's this really weird conundrum of I think that human civilization has always like pushed on this notion and this concept of having like centralization there because it was needed. I think, right? Whether you look at it was safe, right? It gave people purpose. It let you place yourself again in the bigger scheme of things, whether you're talking about economies or religions or whatever it is. This idea of centralization has always been there, but now I think that we are on this some level of precipice where that's not the case. Now, will it be perfect in the next couple years? No way. But will it be something that 15 years from now, kids graduating high school are like, you used to work at like one job? Like that's crazy. Ludicrous. That's crazy. That's absolutely nuts. Like, why would you ever do that? And it's the same way I look now at like, people that have a pension. I'm like, you worked at a company for 50 years. Like that is insane. And so I try to keep that in my mind when I'm thinking about DAOs, and it blows. It absolutely like just twists the noodle for me so much. I'm like that is the cool, like this could be so awesome. This could be so awesome. Like not to like I don't know, I don't care. But like one of our competitors, Brain Trust, does like a DAO type system for their like network of freelancers, which I think is awesome. Like that is so cool. They get tokens, like Brain Trust tokens for participation. They can stake them. They can do. It gives them governance and decision making from the company as a whole. They keep a central company at the top that can deal with like legal things and stuff of that nature. But that concept of using that to incentivize and organize and mobilize the crowd at scale is just such a cool thing.
Yeah, we've been working with a friend of ours runs a hacker DAO, like a white hat hacker DAO, which is super interesting. And they go after bug bounties collectively and stuff like this. And it's super interesting as a mechanism to like unify fractional workers. And it's been something blowing our mind. We worked with a startup last year called Boost, and their whole thing is accounting for like Gen Z gig workers. and diving deep into that world where, like you were saying, this upcoming generation and then the generation behind them, not only are they not working somewhere for 50 years, they're not working one job. It's like, I'm doing graphic design on Fiverr, I'm driving Uber, I'm delivering DoorDash, I'm doing some other random, maybe I got like a part-time job doing something for my school or something. The problem they're tackling is like, how does that person do their taxes, or how do they save money for the future? How do they know where to put their time, right?
Yeah.
There's but that generation, that is work for them. That's
Sure.
what work will look like, and the DAOs are definitely like an interesting cornerstone to that whole world.
Totally. I also want to go in like a different direction though. We've been talking, I feel like we've covered so many cool things in this conversation. We were talking NFTs, we dabbled into AI. I think like, this is the group to discuss, but like, what's the next wave, dude? Like it was like Web3, NFTs, decentralization. Now it's like AI powered tools. What the hell comes next?
What's 2028 looking like?
Yeah, right? 5 years.
I mean, I firmly believe that that wearables are going to be a very big part of our near future.
Boom. We're talking AR
wearables.
glasses. Is
like
that what
like
you're getting at?
Yeah, talking like AR glasses. I think that there's going to be a big. I think there's also going to be a really big, and like with that, like a big push into, like health tech a little bit more.
Okay.
And
Tim Cook recently said, in the like logs of time, Apple will be remembered as a health company. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's I mean, the health tech and like this culmination of it's really more of like looking at how will some of these existing things that we have right now, like how will they collide, which I think is going to be the interesting one, and what ties them together. And like and I say the wearables because wearables is going to be a massive part of our future. I think as soon as you're able to do, comfortable, reliable AR or glasses, the world is going to change just overnight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you
AR
think
cloud
about
as well.
Yeah. And if you think about pairing that with the capabilities of a generative AI system, where you can have this type of like semantic search, conversation, but then with computer vision and stuff on top of it, being able to identify and relate and interact with technology is going to be the big future. Deloitte's got their like recent study out. They're calling that we're currently in the age of with. So it's currently how will humans work with technology rather than building it or working against it, or hopefully no time in the future working for it. Skynet style. But that I find really cool. The other part too that I like twist my noodle on all about is like, we have blockchain over here, right? Your ability to provide provenance and establish value digitally, and then you have generative AI, which is like creating new stuff all the time. Is there some crazy point that we're headed towards where there's going to be this evolution of a new type of value or commodity that is AI generated content that is owned by an AI system itself, with the value anchored on blockchain? And like, can you dispute that in any way? What does that mean when you have, I don't want to call it like rogue AI systems, but if a generative AI system comes up with something, and logs those computations on chain and then establishes ownership, like who really owns it? Who owns it? Like, is it the company that owns the model that built it? Is it the people whose data the model was trained on that built it? Can that system broker value or selling on its own? Like, will there be, peer-to-peer company AI systems that broker back and forth data on their own? Like they'll, create something and then trade it with another AI system all autonomously. Like, I think that's going to be from an economic standpoint, something very fascinating to see.
Gosh, it like changes everything for like ownership and like intellectual property and copyright law even, right?
I don't know if you saw, I love to bring this up for those that haven't seen it, but there was a show streaming on Twitch. I think it's still going, that was like generative Seinfeld.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see this thing?
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
It's
so
strange.
Oh, it's amazing. It's cringe. It's jank. It's everything in one that I love. But I couldn't look away. You know, I would just watch it, and you start to see the patterns and stuff, of course. But like, you know, like even if it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, are we going to be watching TV shows that are like generated on the fly based on my preferences? You know, what's that going to mean for the future of the entertainment industry, right? Why, who's, you know, I don't know. It's interesting. And like, but also would Seinfeld, generative Seinfeld, whatever it was called, I can't remember, would that have been interesting if there wasn't the nostalgia factor of 10 seasons of Seinfeld that I've already watched many times, right?
Right.
So there's an interesting thing there too. I feel like we could go down 1,000 rabbit holes with you, Cory. We're gonna have to have you again, man. This is so good.
Yeah.
At the end here, we love to do a quick little round of rapid fire. I'm gonna start it out. Tell me, what are some books? What are some of the top level books? I know you're a big consumer of information. Have you read anything recently, or not even recently, that's like changed your perspective on a lot of the topics we've been talking about?
The Age of AI, which is written by Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger and Daniel Huttenlocher. It is fascinating. Like, if you want to like take the conversation that we just had of like this experimental future, but then have people that are way smarter about it talk about it from crazy out there perspectives, read it. It's blew my mind recently.
That's great.
That's the kind of books we want to hear
That's it,
about.
man.
Yes, thank you. Good recommendation.
Absolutely. You know, Cory, you've got a lot of responsibility. A lot of people come into you all the time. How do you manage your productivity? Is there like a tool or something that you use to just like stay productive? I use this to like manage this or that. What's your go-to?
Chat GPT. No.
Chat GPT. That's it. Hey, man, that's fair. That's fair game.
Yeah, no. The big thing that I use, it's called the ABC method, and you know, so it's basically a structure for breaking down your time into like 3 top level priorities, and then being able to prioritize like deep work sessions, which I feel like people don't get a lot of these days with remote work. So it's setting up your calendar so you have blocks of at least 3 to 4 hours at a time that do like quote unquote deep work, and that is by far when I am the most productive. And I block them on my calendar. I turn off Slack, turn off everything else, and the output that I do from that will be substantial, like 10x whatever happens in, you know, 30 minute meeting.
Yeah. The deep work is so important, right?
Yeah.
I find early in the day, early in the morning is when I get that done, you know, between like 7 and 10 is good hours for me to try and get shit done. What about your big podcaster? You know, we'll throw a link to yours in the description below for sure. Happy to have you on ours. What are some of the top podcasts you follow when, you know, for entertainment or educational
or
purposes?
industry? Yeah.
Or industry.
Or industry, yeah. The big one that I listen to all the time is Stuff You Should Know.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
Not the first one to recommend that one.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then, God, I feel so bad that I like don't have these more on hand, but there's another one that I was listening to the other day where actually I took that example from about the gold rush. It's called In Search of Green Marbles.
Hey,
In
great.
Search of Green Marbles.
Which is really, really good. And they talk about all kinds of stuff from AI to biohealth to the economy to anything that you could think of, but really, really good podcast as well.
Nice. Kind of the emerging tech, kind of what's going on in the world that you should know.
Well, can I ask you a question before I go off? Do you have any podcasts that you recommend that I could start listening to?
You know, I'm a variety guy. I've been listening to this one recently. It's called Revenue Vitals. This guy's super interesting. Yeah. And he talks a lot about, I mean, he's like a marketing guy at the end of the day, but he talks a lot about treating revenue programs in big companies like research and development, and treating marketing like research and development. And that, you know, if you decide to run a program, you've got to run it for an extended period of time before you can expect any return. That was like a major change in thinking for me. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, you even mentioned running some programs with clients around AI and stuff, and 3 months later they didn't get the value and they shut it down. And that's crazy. And that if you're looking at things from an R&D perspective, sometimes you need to run it for a year before it's even ready to go to market, before you can make any money off it. So Revenue Vitals, super interesting one for me, and totally changed my way of thinking about how companies make money and how companies market themselves.
And obviously Cory's podcast. Obviously Cory's podcast too, which we'll provide a link to in the description.
Yeah.
Super good to have you, my man. Always a treat to jam on this stuff with a big brain like yourself. That's it for today. We got to have you again, though.
Absolutely,
please.
dude.
Come on back.
Please.
Would love. Hey, want to have you guys on mine too.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. See ya.
Thanks again for joining us on this episode. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're tuning in from. And while you're at it, drop us a like. I already asked for the like, but I'm asking again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.